Greetings everyone, and welcome back to another wonderful episode. We are continuing as they reminisce about the past at the Shie Hall. We never had any bamboo swords at the Shie Hall. Just the wooden one that you bastards would use to beat the hell out of each other.
最初にお前の相手をしたのが掃除じゃなかったら、骨の5、6本は折れてたはずだぜ。
Jeez. I remember Soju was the first to challenge you to a fight, and I worried that the two of you would break 6 or 7 bones. 5 or 6 bones, all accounted for.
下手すりゃ、死人が出てたかもな。
Worst case, one of you could have died.
掃除も掃除で、お前を殺す勢いで木刀を叩き込もうとしやがるし。
And god damn it, Soji. He had used so much force. I was sure he'd kill you with his wooden sword.
俺たちが途中で止めてなきゃ、確実にどっちかが死んでたな。
If you hadn't put a stop to it, then one of you would be dead on the floor, still as rock. There was a bright glimmering of nostalgia coming from Hijikata's eyes as he reminisced about the Shie halls. Godo, Hijikata-san, and Okita, Nagakura, Harada, and Heisuke. The place where all of the Shinsengumi men had spent their youth. And for Saito, this was home of refuge in which he could forge both his identity and his technique. A place to call home.
試合を終えた後、卑怯者、邪道、無作法者と言われなかったのは、あの時が初めてでした。
For the first time ever, no one referred to me as a coward, a heretic, or some other Kolyu's term once our matches were completed.
真剣で切り合う時に、卑怯もクソも言ってられねえからな。そんなことくっちゃべってる間に切られちまう。
Well, when it comes to crossing real swords, there's no time to bother with any shit talking. They'd stick the sword in your mouth and quickly as you could open it.
それに、右差しは反則でもなんでもねえだろう。お前の立場で考えりゃ、周りの連中全員が反則してるみてえなもんだろうしな。
Besides, what idiot would call putting your sword on your right hip cheating? From your perspective, pretty much everyone else was cheating too. Coming from Hijikata, those words must have been the greatest gift Saito could ever have
あの
received.
時俺はこう思いました。
Back then, I believed in one thing.
あんたや近藤さんの命令なら、尊攘派の大物志士でも大名でも偉人でも、どんな人間でも切り殺すことができ
That
る
if
と。
the order came from either you or Kondo, I could kill anyone. No matter if there were some nationalist patriot or even a daimyo.
実際、お前には汚れ仕事ばっかりさせてきちまったよな。悪かったな。
Yeah, well, we kinda touted you around and made you do all the dirty work, so, sorry about it. Saito shook his head curtly in response for Hijikata's apology.
それを受け入れて実行したのは俺の意志です。俺は自分で命令に従うことを選びました。
It was my will to accept those missions and execute you as requested. I chose to follow your orders.
そしてそれを、これから先もずっと続けていくつもりでした。
And I intend to do so thirsty. However,
なあ、斎藤。俺たちから離れることを、そこまで申し訳なく思うことねえんだぜ。
hey, Saito, don't beat yourself up for us heading our separate
お
ways.
前は、お前の意志で主君を、お前の生き方を選んだ。ただそれだけのことだ。
You served who you wanted to. Beyond that, you carved your own life that mattered to you. That's all there is to it.
お前が選んだ道は、間違ってねえよ。
Your path is your own, and there's nothing wrong with that. Saito looked to be fighting back tears. He subtly dug his teeth in his lip, trying to hold back the deluge of emotion that was waiting to burst. But even so, he spoke with a restrained monotone. Perhaps if he hadn't done so, his voice would be a little more of a bubbling mess of emotions. So in typical fashion, Saito was attempting to remain taciturn in his face of duty. And after a moment, Hijikata turned to Shimada.
島田、お前はどうするつもりなんだ？
Shimada, where are you off to next?
俺はもちろん土方さんと共に参ります。
I will follow you, of course, Hijikata, sir.
せっかくここまで来たんですから、どこまでもお付き合いしますよ。
I've come this far, and whether you shall go, I shall go. What about you, Heisuke? Are you leaving with Hijikata as well?
ま
俺は一度死んじまったようなもんだからさ。
Well, I mean, I kinda died once already,
あ
so...
の時、一旦死んで生き返ってまで何をしたかったのかを今までずっと考えてたんだけど。
This whole time I've been wondering to myself what I wanted about, what I wanted out of life enough to dodge that, the whole death thing and come back to life. Heisuke stopped himself. Do you think of an answer?
そうだな。
Well, Heisuke scratched his nose, absent-mindedly, before timidly assuming a reflective tone.
もし俺があのまま羅刹にならずに死んでたとしたら、
If I died that day, before I ever got the chance to become a fury,
きっと最後の瞬間、こう思ってたんじゃねえかな。
I think I would have just been thinking about one thing as I severed my last
せっ
moment.
かくだから、みんなで作った新選組がどうなるのかを最後まで見届けたかったって。
I gotta see how the Shinsigumi gonna end up. Since I was there, since it all started.
おい平介、最後までっつうのはどういう
Hey, Heisuke, what do you mean with ends up?
新選組がもうすぐなくなっちまうみてえじゃねえか。縁起でもね
You're
え。
talking like the Shinsengumi is going on there. Don't jinx it, you stupid. Hijikata glared at Heisuke, and then he stuck out his tongue playfully.
それに今の土方さんって背中がガラ空きだからさ、誰かがついててやらねえとな。
Besides, Hijikata's losing his men left and right, so, you'd have someone to watch his back. Oh. What about you guys? Soma, Nomura?
俺たちも副長にお供します。
We're leaving with the commander as well.
そうそう。
That's right.
こうなったら、地の果てまで追いかけてやるぜ。
We're in for the long haul. We're gonna follow him till the end. I see. This whole time, I've been walking alongside the men of Shinsengumi. But now our paths are splintering, and it seems each of us has a destiny to fulfill. I suppose I'd be lying as if I wouldn't miss them, but Hijikata said their path is their own.
雪村、お前はどうするつもりなんだ
So what about you, Yukimura? Where are you going off to next? Hijikata had mentioned that this place would soon become a battlefield fraught with death and danger. If I were to remain here, I likely would stand no chance. However, the same choice fell on Saito's shoulder. If either one of us chose a different path, it was likely that two of us would never see each other again. I will stay here. Yeah, we're going with, yeah, we're going with Saito. Or not. I kinda want to see what's going to become of Saito. I will stay here. My answer came to everyone's surprise. The individual who seemed most surprised was Saito, whose expression was still aimed towards the ground in a fit of suppression in his emotions. Although the words hadn't come from his mouth, his brows told the entire story, furrowed with so much curiosity as to why I answered how I did.
さっきの俺たちの話、聞いてたよな。合図はこれから激戦地になる。
You heard our entire conversation just now, didn't you? Aizu is about to become hell on earth.
ここに残れば、ひでえ死に方をするのは目に見えてる。
If you stay here, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that you'll get your ass killed in a horrible way.
それでも残りてえってのか。
So in spite of all that, you wanna stay? Yes. I'd be lying if I say I wasn't scared. The thought of living my life without Saito, scattered somewhere else, while he fought there. I couldn't think of another
理由
option.
は聞かねえ方がいいのかな。
Maybe, I shouldn't even bother asking. As Hijikata expressed his resignation, he glanced over at Saito. In turn, Saito's gaze was fixed on me, staring at me with the same stony blue eyes I'd always admired.
二人でゆっくり話し合って決めろよ。
Alright, I'm gonna give you a chance to talk it over.
無理なようだったら、後から俺たちを追っかけてきてもいいんだしな。
If you change your mind, you can always catch up with us later, kid. And with that, Hijikata kindly patted my shoulder with his hand. Then he turned around and began sauntering down the mountain path along Shimada, Heisuke, Soma, and Nomura. As soon as his footsteps were out of earshot, Saito broke the silence.
何故あんなことを言った？
Why was that your answer? It had been so long since I'd found myself on the other end of one of Saito's frigid questions. The bite in his voice made my stomach drop, but I stood tall and stayed put.
今からでも遅くはない。土方さんの後を追って共に行け。
It is not too late. Run after Hijikata and go with him. No.
さっき話していたことを聞いてなかったのか。
Had you been ignoring everything that was discussed earlier?
これから合図は戦火に見舞われる。今度ばかりは生き延びられるかわからない。
War and bloodshed will ravage Aizu like wildfire. There's no guarantee you'll safely
こ
this
こに
time.
残っても
You will die,
無駄死にするだけだ。
and your life will have been wasted. I looked straight at Saito, facing his harsh words head on, and I turned the questions right back to him. Saito, you plan on dying on the battlefield, do you? No answer came from him at first. Surely he had planned on explaining some lie in order to save face. Instead, he grimaced angrily and threw his hands into the air as if he had abandoned his original
だ
answer.
としたらどうだというのだ。
So what if I am? In this moment, I'd realized that any sentiment shared between Saito and myself was thinner than a strand of hair. We'd never exchanged promises for the future. In an actuality, I had no clue what Saito thought of me, much less of those thoughts bloomed into anything real. All that we had to fall back on were our words. Perhaps only in the space of our conversation had I done anything to climb into his heart, but only just. Even so, I had to try. Then I'm staying here too. I won't leave your side until the very end. As the words escaped my lips, Saito scowled at me with such ferocity. It was as if his eyes could summon daggers that were aimed right at me.
俺があんたの命の恩人だからか。
Is it because I saved your life?
あんたを守れと命じたのは土方さんだ。俺はただ命令に従ったまでのこと。
The command to protect you came directly from Ijikata. All I did was follow orders.
そんな義理のために命を危険にさらすべきではない。さっさと行け。
You need not expose yourself to dangers on my behalf, meaning there is no business that requires your presence. Hurry and take your leave. But I refused to move. Instead, I balled my hand into a fist and I spoke. That's not it. I don't want to stay with you just because you saved my life.
では何故だ。
Then why? I was tired of being placed at the center of his question and instead I fought back. Is it too much to ask to want to be with you? My heart pounded furiously in my chest, realizing I was challenging a man who stored his anger silently behind his vacant expression. But I was steadfast and staring into his eyes, patiently attempting to draw whatever truth I could from him. Saito once said to me that the heart sings its song through the eyes. Pools of azure floated idly in his irises, and I was lost in them as their light made its way to me. Eventually turned
あん
away.
たを死なせたくない。
I cannot bear the thought of your death. At last, an honest truth came from his tired lips. And so too relief came to me. Saito has exposed his heart to me face to face. Well, I can bear the thought of yours either, Saito. But this is the truth I've come to accept, the truth that one day you may not return to me. But I also accept that if you abandon the Aizu when they need you the most, you may regret it forever. So grant me this. I want to remain by your side. Until I can no longer breathe, I'm yours. I know that this is rather selfish of me to request. Saito took in everything I had said, quietly considering my humble words. I looked as though each word was turned over and over in his head again, perhaps searching for one last way to convince me to leave for Ichikata, but... Love!
あんたが思っているほど強い人間ではない。
I am not as strong of a person as you think of me to be. Out of the blue came a tender reflection.
何が正しくて何が間違っているのかを見分ける目だと持っていない。
The power to determine what is right, what is wrong in this circumstance eludes me.
こうしている今も、土方さんのもとへ走ろうか。今から急いで追えばまだ間に合うのではないかと考え。
Until now I find myself torn. Part of me hopes to follow Hijikata, as if I still have time to change my
敵兵
mind.
に殺される間際、負傷した時、落ち水の毒で血に狂った時、
Do I die in the hands of my enemy? Or do I wait until the madness of the water of life takes me
見苦
instead?
しくのたうち回らぬ自信などない。
Of the latter option, I have no confidence in living.
ただ俺は死ぬ間際まで武士でいたい。最後は近藤さんのように潔くあの世へ行きたいと思ってい
That
る。
my sword swings true until my last breath is all I wish for. I hope that in my passing, I will go nobly, like Gondo before
そ
me.
のためには自分の心に沿う答えを、自分にとって正しい答えを選び続けるしかない。
In order to do so, I must commit what remains of my life to this path. I must commit what remains of my life to this path I have laid out before
だ
me.
からアイスに残ることを決め
That's
た。
why I decided to stay in Aizo. His tone didn't have the same detached nonchalantness to which I had come accustomed, but rather it was a frustrated expression of the state between him and me. This was like Saito's inner self revealed, the true Saito who bore no need for pretense.
だが今あんたの目に映っている俺が弱い部分など持たぬ完璧な武士であるなら、
However, if you're looking at a man before you as an impenetrable warrior without fault,
見苦しい姿をわざわざ晒す必要はあるまい。
then the truth is best kept
この
privy
まま別れるのがいい。
to the likes of you. For now, perhaps parting is more appropriate.
行け。俺は本当の俺の姿などあんたに見せたくはない。
So go. To be quite honest, the thought of you witnessing myself at my worst is an unsavory one. His voice was hushed, but his words struck with such spot and nerve with me that it was as if he were screaming them into my face. And still I refused to move. I don't think you should worry too much about whether or not you're making the right choice. And this is something that's stressing you out. So whatever choice you make, I'll be there to support you no matter what. And no matter what happens to you, I'll never think anything less of you. So please, let me stay with you. I could see Saito's eyes widen. Our silence brought with it a nervous tension, and I almost felt as though he would strike me, or grab my wrist and drag me to his Chikata's conveyor itself. As impatience and dread began to get the better of me. Satisfaction! Saito came close to me, our faces only an inch apart. His slender fingers wrapped around my neck, and then he cozily drew me into an embrace. To embrace me tightly. Nice. Romance. I love it. I love it. The gorgeous blue eyes were gazing into my own, and together we basked in an unspoken comfort. His lower lip quivered as if he could break into tears at any moment. Within sight of timid embrace, our eyes were locked together. But then he pulled back in a nervous stupor.
それがあんたの出した答えだな。
So is this what you truly want? Every word he spoke sounded like he was working to convince himself of my answer, but rather than an honest, intuitive tone.
後で悔やんだりしないか。
You won't come to regret it later.
さっきの言葉が今のあんたにとって最も正しい答えか。
What you just said is... That is how you actually feel, right? Saito's leer was piercing, and with both eyes he was searching desperately for validation. It was the first time I've seen such an urgent, vulnerable expression behind his eyes, which had seen a lifetime of pain. So I told him the truth. Yes, I want nothing more than to be with you, Saito. Please take me with you. I looked up at Saito, telling the man whom I had loved everything I knew I had yearned for to hear. Sato's eyes moistened ever so slightly, and for a brief moment he seemed caught in an emotional limbo between laughter and crying.
誠実な瞳だな。
Your eyes, are full of truth.
心の底からの魂から出た言葉を口にした時の
Within them is an
嘘偽りない目だ。
inimitable honesty, as if your eyes could summon the very thoughts of your heart. And behind them I see no hint of deceit. A wave of relief seemed to cover over Saito, and he gulped anxiously. Then his lips slowly approached mine. And just before our lips touched, Saito contemplated for just a beat. And then, as if he were repeating my words again in his head, his lips curled into a smile. At the last, our lips met. Yeah! It was the first time I've ever kissed a man. At first, my heart raced frantically, pounding harder than I've ever felt, and I was enveloped by a warm, calm sense of calm. Saito's supple lips quivered preciously against mine. If only this kiss were a promise for the future beyond the blissful ephemera. But what lies in store of us we do not know. It could be a lifetime of despair and woe, but even then the moist, the tender touch of his lips pressed against mine as we exchanged a moment of passion gave me a life worth of happiness. In this moment our hearts became one, and this alone was enough for us to, as we considered our lives hanging in the balance of our future. Nice. Romance. The next night, as we were approaching our camp, our walk was interrupted by misfortune. Saito! The color of Saito's face had all but left, and he began to gasp. He dug his fingernails into his chest, grimacing for the agonizing pain as sweat began to cover his fragile frame. Blood. He needs blood. He needs blood. Since we're with him forever, I'm gonna give him blood. Saito, here, drink my blood. Saito, as usual, shuddered at the thought, and he turned to look away from me in a discomforting fit. But like I had done previously, I unsheathed my kadachi and made a small cut just underneath my ear. Saito quietly held me closely, bringing his eager lips to suck at the small droplets of blood emerging. His warm, tingling tongue traced the path formed by the slow tickle of falling droplets down my neck. After a panicked moment, Saito's breath finally began to calm and eventually normalized. I tried to step back to give him some room, but as I moved, his hand tightened on my shoulder, and he coolly whispered into my ear as the cut underneath began to seal itself. A little longer. Please just let me linger for a moment longer. His words were so gentle and sincere. Okay. I gave him a small nod and I leaned myself against him. It was the night before our departure for the Shirakawa castle. I had spent a peaceful night in a room all to myself, thanks to the Aizu military generosity, generously renting a house for accommodation. Although our own chances of victory were dwarfed by the size of weaponry of our adversaries, for some strange reason I felt no fear, no worry. Perhaps it was because I had already accepted the fact that our backs were against the wall. Or maybe it was because I was given a chance to remain beside the man I love.
Yukimura, そろそろ休んだらどうだ?
Yukimura, it is time for you to rest, is it not?
夜通し起きていると、明日行軍している最中に倒れるかもしれんぞ。
It seems like he is speaking her words. She definitely has influenced him a lot. Staying up all night may exhaust you, which may lead you to collapse during our march tomorrow. Well, why don't you rest too, Saito? Saito reacted sheepishly to my suggestion, and he turned away blushing.
あとどれだけの時間、あんたと共にいられるかわからん。
It troubles me knowing that the amount of time we have to spend together may be waning.
眠る時間すら惜しい。と言ったら笑うか。
Would you laugh if I said that I do not wish to waste any single moment with you by sleeping? No. I shook my head. I feel the same way. Sleeping right now seems impossible. Indeed. Saito's response was short, but even so I could tell there was a weight of sentiment behind it. And the room was filled with a nervous silence, as if we both lingered on the cusp of saying something more. Ever since we had separated from Mijikata and Nagariyama, Saito and I had seen numerous skirmishes in the Imperial forces. We became aware of our thin chances of survival, and hope became a hollow gesture. This uncertainty made each moment we had shared all the more precious, and we severed every single one with a plump as our hearts willed it. I glanced cautiously at Saito, and he stared outside the window silently, watching the scattered stars glimmering above. Saito, do you enjoy looking at the stars? My question prompted him to gaze inquisitively at me in kind.
何故そう思う?
Why do you ask? That night in Kofu, you were so entranced by the stars that night as well.
あんたは俺をよく見ているな。
Your interest in my behavior is quite peculiar. Well, yes, I have loved you for some time now. The words came so naturally from my mouth. These feelings of attraction had stewed in my heart for such a long time. How had I not realized it? Saito merely brushed and shrugged his shoulders.
夜空だけではない。昼間の空も、虹も、海も好きだ。
It's not the starry night alone that captivates me, but also sunsets, rainbows, and the sea. Starry nights, sunsets, rainbows, and sea? Saito seemed to be muttering random phrases, and I cocked in my head in befuddlement. It seems as though none of these things had anything in common, but Saito stared once more outside the window in admiration, as if it were a bright sunny morning.
途方もなく大きなものを見るのが好きなのだ。
The vastness of our world contains wonders of which I will never grow tired.
夜空も、昼間の空も、
The night sky, the sunset, rainbows, and the sea.
大きなものをただじっと見ていると、些細な悲しみや不安が、いつの間にか消えてなくなってしまう気がする。
Watching the world's majesty unfold so beautifully gives me hope that all of the sorrow and anguish it gives birth to will someday dissipate. You have a point. Every time I had found Saito stargazing, it seemed he was reflecting upon his own self-doubts. His heart always seemed so heavy. The timing of his reflective mood was understandable, and his melancholic gaze was quaint besides the window.
俺にとっては、近藤さんや土方さんもそういう存在だった。
For myself, I viewed Kondo and Nijikata's lives as another one of these world majesties as well.
彼らについていけば間違いはない。
But following them, I could never go astray.
俺の不安や悩みを消し去ってくれる大いなるものの象徴だった。
I believe they represented something larger than life, which imbued me with hope amidst my anxieties. I sat up and I walked towards Saito. Saito, you're feeling anxious right now.
何故だ。
Why do you ask? Because Kondo and Hijikata, neither of them are here to offer any words of guidance and support for you anymore. Saito reached his hand over to mine and clasped it kindly.
心細くはない。あんたがいるからな。
I feel no loneliness. I have you besides me. He smiled. Saito's words were touching, but are you sure? When you're stressed, or if you're in pain, or if you're struck wondering if you've made the right choice, do you trust me to help you and be there for you when you need me? For Saito, both Hijikata and Shinsengumi provided an irreplaceable system of support. I had no confidence whatsoever that I could fill any of those roles that either Hijikata or the group had given. In response, Saito gripped my hand tightly. He began to entwine his slender fingers lovingly with my own, which at first was a little awkward, but it was an adorable gesture nonetheless.
あんたはただそばにいるだけで俺の支えになってくれている。
All I ask of you is to love me. This alone is everything I need.
あんたの前で見苦しい姿を晒すわけにはいかない。
Allowing you to witness me in a vulnerable state is something I cannot permit.
最後の最後まで武士として戦わねばならない。
Until my life is forfeit, I must honor my duties as a warrior.
あんたと共にいると一人でにそういう気持ちにさせられる。
And having you here with me, my mind is put at ease immediately.
だから不安に思う必要はない。
So it needn't be of any concern to you. I see. Like always, Saito, calm, reassures, comfort me. For as long as he would have me, I will stick by him. Even until the very last second of my life, I will do whatever he asks of me as long as we're together. It was deflating, however, to think that these moments were numbered. If anything, I recognized this as an opportunity to ask him about things I had always wondered. What should I ask him first? The past, the future? Oh, this is a difficult one. I'm thinking, what is the best question? I want to get those love points up. How about we ask him about the future? What is he planning to do? Maybe he will change his mind and try to look forward to something. Saito, is there anything you're excited to do once this war is over? My question seemed to have Saito caught off guard, and he titled his head perplexious.
特にないが、何故そんなことを聞く？
Nothing in particular comes to mind. Why do you ask? Really, nothing. Well, for example, do you want to continue down this path of mastering your EI
俺が他人に剣術を教えると、
and become an instructor?
左利きの人間に剣を習いに来る者などおらぬだろう。
I find it difficult to believe that enough left-handed swordsmen exist to warrant such instruction. Oh, he was right. Saito had been repeatedly ostracized for being a left-handed swordsman, which invited him so much unnecessary critique about his swordsmanship.
あんたはこの戦が終わったら何をしたいと思っているのだ？
And what say you? Do any plans for the future catch your fancy? Assuming you live. No immediately answer came to mind. I could have a point in describing how I envisioned the two of us living together and how I would have liked to bear his children. In fact, if giving more time, I could have easily imagined what I wanted from the future, but in the moment it went blank. Perhaps for Saito he felt similarly. I don't think either of us were able to shake the sense of foreboring, and perhaps it was futile to imagine a world in which we had both survived the war. Silence fell between us once more. Bright white clouds covered every inch of the sky. Our evening together, it seems, had come to an end. However, Saito had found ourselves unwilling to budge. His hand was still gently coiled in mine, and our bodies were leaned against each other. After prolonged silence, Saito glanced over my direction before whispering softly into my ear.
雪村、あんたに一つ約束しておく。
Yukimura, I wish to make you a promise. Huh? A promise? What is it? Saito kept his stare fixed
こ
on
れ
me.
から先、何があっても、
Whatever
俺は
the
命を懸けて
circumstances,
あんたを守る。
whatever the circumstances, I will protect you with my life.
新選組でも、土方さんでも、会津公の命令でもなく、
This
俺
promise,
自身の命令で。
this promise comes not from the Shinsengumi, or Hichikata, or the Aizu. It is a promise that is delivered entirely of my own volition. His tone was hushed and flattering, but within each word was a forced resolve and purpose. Saito was making his vow to me, knowing that he had assumed his responsibility and went so far as to call it a promise made my heart flutter. Yet it was difficult to respond at first. What response could I give after he poured himself to me? My hands were trembling, but I reached out to him. I wanted to be as close to him as I humanly could. I wanted him to know how much I loved him. Beautiful. With this, my friends, we will end this very romantic episode, as I do feel that as soon as we're going into the next episode, as soon as we're going to Storm, I think I'm going to cry. I hope for a good ending, I do not know. And I hope to see you there with me, my friends. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment down below, and I will see you next one. Have a good day, everyone.